applications, and he's been writing quite a bit lately about telematics and this emerging medium. He's also, by the way, first-time moderator here at MediaPost. Please don't break him. I want to use him again. Please welcome Karl Greenberg.
Thank you, thank you. How the hell does this thing? All right, let me just start with some stats. You know, I have to as moderator. I got to start with some numbers. So anyway, right now, you guys can correct me, by the way, if these are like way off base, which, you know, I just grab them from subway wall. So ABI research says last year, 11.4% of new vehicles worldwide were equipped with telematics. By 2016, it'll be over 60%. That should give some idea of where this is heading. 88% of new cars will be connected in some way by 2025, which is actually a long way from now. I would have expected it would be a lot sooner than that. 88%, 2025. Doesn't that seem like...
It's conservative. Definitely conservative.
Yeah, it's very conservative. So, okay, so here's some interesting stats from eMarketer. 55% of respondents to a poll, I guess their poll, maybe, said that they would use in-car services that they can access on home computer. So that's going to be a major thing here, just sort of taking interactivity out of the car. Half said they would like to browse the internet from their dashboards. I don't know, that's scary. 47% they'd like news and opinion websites on their dash. 40% want the ability to update social media directly from a car's dashboard. 34% want streaming media. 40% file sharing. And then there's this is what I like. This is Cisco Systems customer experience report. 57% of people are happy, would be happy to ride in a car controlled entirely by the car. So they would do no driving, which has incredible implications, because that will happen more and more over time. A lot of implications for everything we're talking about here, since there will be a lot less driver distraction issue. So I guess I want to start with the car guys. What is your role in creating this experience, the telematics infotainment experience, vis-a-vis creating a really meaningful brand for your, for Subaru and Kia? Why is it? Let me put it. Is telematics kind of the new horsepower in terms of what people are going to be really into when they shop a new car? Is this going to be kind of the central message people are going to hear about? Is how can I stay connected in my car? And what's the Kia experience? And what's the Subaru experience going to be?
Do you want me to start? I can start. Hello, everyone. I'm Henry Bzeih, the head of telematics and infotainment at Kia. And to answer the question that was posed, it's really quite simple, because think about the vehicles today. They started to converge from a design perspective and look alike, right? Also, the quality aspects of the vehicle. We used to have major gaps between the brands in terms of quality, but I beg to differ. I think that has been pretty much narrowed. So it opens up kind of another avenue, which is the avenue of digital life, and how does that translate into the vehicle? And so this is where the era of connected car comes into play, because it's a differentiator, and it's a brand DNA, because the expectation from customers today, as we have our smartphones everywhere we go, is to translate that experience into the car. So it's an expectation, and as we move more forward towards the next 5 years, it's probably going to be one of the things that people look at when they're purchasing a vehicle, whether this vehicle is connected or not. So this is kind of the vision of how we are approaching this thing. We feel this is really important and critical to our brand.
All right, David.
So at Subaru, is infotainment or telematics the new horsepower? I would say no. Horsepower is still horsepower. Depends on the car that you're buying, largely, right? For a WRX buyer, both are really important. Yeah, we hear from more and more customers on a daily, monthly basis that they're interested in technology in the car. One of our key concerns is making sure that it's safe and easy to use. So the partnerships that we develop to try to make our experience unique inside Subarus, you will see be kind of oriented in that direction. I mean, just to give you a couple more data points to support some of the other things that you had given us at the beginning of the panel. And by the way, I'm David Sullivan, cross-car line manager for Subaru. I deal with strategic projects, including infotainment and telematics.
Yeah, I should have you guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that.
You guys should, when you talk, just introduce yourselves.
Sure. So, so a couple data points. About half, as of last year, about half of Subaru consumers had adopted a smartphone, or had reported that they adopted a smartphone, and about 2/3 of those users were interested in using apps inside the car. We do obviously expect those numbers to grow significantly in the next couple of years as more and more people adopt smartphones. I think smartphones are a little over half of the market at this point in time.
Yep.
So yeah, there's still a lot of growth, and you quoted the 2025 number that it was 88% of the cars roughly would be connected.
Yeah.
And there's always, I think, going to be, I mean, even today, there are some cars on the market that don't have something as simple as Bluetooth technology standardized yet. There's still a few out there. So all Subarus are, but there's still a few out there in the market that don't. But I think there is definitely customer interest, and at the end of the day, that's driving what we put in the cars. I mean, we listen to customers closely. I'm sure our friends over at Kia and Hyundai do the same thing. And when people ask for the stuff, we try to get it as quickly as we can into our vehicles.
Chia-Lin, I want to go back to this, but here's a scenario, and I mentioned this to you before. The marketer would love to do something like this. I'm driving down the street, I pass a store, my favorite store. I get, I get a ping or something on my smartphone saying that I've just passed it. They know I've just passed the store. Something happens on the screen, on the head unit, that making an offer relevant to that store at this time. Is that something that can happen now? And what role would AHA have in that kind of thing happening in real time in my car through, say, your aggregation channel?
That's a great question. Chia-Lin Simmons, VP of Marketing and Content for Harman International. Harman is Harman Kardon, JBL, but probably lesser known is that we are the tier 1 provider for many, many automakers globally. And so the AHA system provides a super sort of aggregator platform that basically provides a whole bunch of different types of content, from internet radio to location-based services and all of that. And so Karl's question to us is really, can we serve advertising from consumer packaged goods companies, for example, or even retailers in real time based on your geographic data? And so the answer is within the next year, if not a little bit shorter. You'll see basically cars being able to offer coupons and location-based offerings as you're driving to the store. And the scenario I paint is that, for example, if I'm not saying affirming or denying any of this, but let's say that we were driving by a Gap or even a Chipotle or something of that nature. If the real-time sales data is down for that particular store, they're incentivized to basically get you through that store right away. And so if you're a fan and you checked off that you wanted to receive real-time information about coupons, we actually will be able to facilitate the delivery of that coupon, knowing that you are a fan of the Gap or Chipotle, and deliver you that 10% or 15% off coupon in real time. You just have to sort of click and say, yes, deliver me a coupon in my mobile phone, so when I stop at the location, I can grab that coupon and then now click to navigate me to that particular store.
But are the automakers going to have a problem with that from the safety perspective, that kind of real-time?
Sure. I think that's a really good question. And today, if you're listening to entertainment like FM and AM stations in the car, you get interrupted in your programming all the time by advertising, right? And today, if you are navigating using the navigation system, you're able to click and then basically navigate to the location you need to do. The question is, in a car setting, are we giving you and offering you an action that is not multiple steps, that requires you to really focus on, what's happening in that sort of stack experience versus something that you already normally do in a car, which is navigate to somewhere or listen to something and get interrupted by an ad. And so what we're offering in terms of the AHA platform is very much focused on, it's like a FM ad, audio setting. So we're offering you this coupon, we're reading it to you, and then you one click, to navigate to what you like. And again, everything one action. And so you're not going to look at this coupon in your phone because your phone is lock screened out. And so you're only going to be able to get this coupon once you untether the phone from the car.
Okay. Bernard, is this, where else could this go? I mean, so far we're kind of talking about a fairly specific kind of channel, right? I mean, the head unit and the smartphone. We were talking earlier, what are some other opportunities here for marketers? And also was this, do you think it's going to be mostly endemic marketers, or do you see this also as, going beyond that to other kinds of marketing categories? And who's interested that you've, interacted with?
Okay, so Bernard Briggs, I'm Chief Technology Officer for T3, technology-fueled creative agency here out of New York with offices in Austin and San Francisco. So we think perhaps, the car in the seat is a completely different place altogether. It might not be just about the coupon or the alert or the notification as much as it is in other places. And we've done a lot of thinking too around just the idea of perhaps it's more of a sponsored experience, right? So perhaps it's more of a brand-sponsored commute, a brand-sponsored drive, brand-sponsored road trip. And so you can just see the subtlety there, and there's just a different way of that brand getting at the driver who's quite captive at that moment, right? So
how would you do that?
Perhaps some of the clients you might be familiar with of ours, and I'll pick on one today. Take for instance 7-Eleven. 8,000 convenience stores throughout the United States, and you can imagine positioned perfectly to sponsor my road trip to Chicago, right? And so instead of taking the position of kind of interjecting, my experience that I might be having on, I don't know, a Spotify, or might be having on FM with something real time, perhaps it's more of a sponsored experience, and they're giving me more utility, right, on that commute versus entertainment or information. And taking just one brand like that and sitting down and thinking through how we could technically provoke advertising and marketing to be and look a lot differently when the driver's in the seat, I think at the same time addresses some security or some safety risk on it. Right. So I think our challenge would be, as we look at the driver's seat and we looked at that captive driver who spends, frankly, about 158 minutes in that seat a day on average versus 144 on the phone, right? So it's a very captive, very useful target, but at the same time, we think that he or she could be approached much differently.
And that would depend on the automakers being willing to some extent to allow development beyond the head.
You bet it would. And as the geek in the room, that's kind of what we're responsible for. I think, just provoking technologically, we think that there's a true developer experience to be had in the car. Right, and not, and I understand, the car brands and the car manufacturers want to maintain ownership of that, but we're hoping is that it does evolve. It evolves to be more of an open dev experience, where guys like us can get in there and add value as well.
Well, that's an interesting question. I want to ask you guys about this. I was thinking about this. We're now in a time, and I don't really, where you've, maybe for the first time, you have in the car, in the greenhouse, competing brands that aren't the car competing with each other for the driver's attention. How much are you guys willing to give up of that space to people from outside your, developers who may be developing protocols that allow marketers to come in and engage the driver at different times? And like, what role do you play in saying, okay, this isn't safe. No, we're not giving this away. This you can't do. Because I know, was it GM or Ford? Maybe it's GM who's actually been talking about, giving away some of their space to develop open development.
I mean, it's definitely something we've thought about. I think we're going to be very careful in the way we evaluate partners. The partner will have to fit Subaru's kind of brand ethic, or kind of where our space, where we fit. I don't think we would just kind of give that away to anybody. They would have to be close partners of ours. We happen to partner with Harman and AHA inside our vehicle. So They kind of have a special place in the Subaru realm, so to speak. So, we would definitely be willing to, think about letting AHA do some things in that regard, or any brand for that matter, I think that fit kind of our space and were close partners with us. But to just let kind of anybody in, I think we'd have to be very careful about that and allowing that to happen, because you can imagine there might be a lot of disconnects that could occur. Okay.
Karl, now getting back to more, I guess, what we would think of as traditional marketing through a radio channel, even though you guys do something totally different. What does the streaming radio experience do in terms of how it might compete with the more traditional, advertising models, Clear Channel, for instance? What does the subscription model offer on your channel that that is either better or different, or cuts a different way, or offers a completely different advertising model?
Yeah, that was a loaded question there. So briefly, Karl Rohling, Vice President of Business Development at TuneIn Radio. TuneIn Radio is a free service that enables listeners access to global radio. We enable access to over 70,000 radio stations and over 2 million on-demand / NPR or popular BBC programs. Really, what we've done is taken your traditional radio dial of 20 AM FM stations and given you a global dial, whether it's directly into a head unit or you bring your iPhone or your Android phone into the car. We've given you a global radio. You can access now thousands of stations from quality programs in over 200 countries and territories. So we really have changed the whole dynamic now of how you access radio in the car. I think the specific question is traditional media, particularly when it comes to radio, it's transforming. It's happened with newspapers, it's happened with books, we've seen it now in music, but radio really has been the last mass media market that's shifted to the internet. More than half of the consumption's in the car, so it's important, which is why we put so many resources into bringing TuneIn into the car. But local media spots, local media buying is not going to change. It's just how it's going to be fulfilled. Joe's Garage still needs to get to that local user. They want to access that person in a local area. It's just we have the ability now with services like TuneIn to identify based on where they are versus what they're listening to. They could be listening to a station in Los Angeles, driving in New York, and we could target ads just simply by the fact that they're in New York. So the medium is shifting, the way it's being distributed is shifting, but the value will still be in providing local spots to the listeners.
Mm. Yes, John.
If I may comment on that, I think Karl's completely right. It's about sort of globalization of the fourth band of radio. You had AM, FM, 20 stations, 30 stations. XM brought you 200. That's nationwide. You see companies like TuneIn and AHA bringing you, literally hundreds of thousands of channels to pick from in your dashboard. Which, you think about how many decades that radios have been in a vehicle. That's fairly large, evolutionary jumps in terms of what's available. I think certainly geographic targeting is important, but also concepts of interactivity. Imagine listening to a McDonald's ad and, you get your typical sort of 15-second, McDonald's, let's say McRib time, right? But suddenly, instead of just delivering just a straight out one-to-many broadcast advertising, you're able to actually bring interactivity so that you can just click and navigate to McDonald's. So McDonald's literally will know that not only are you targeting the right geographic area because somebody's actually geographically near a McDonald's or Joe's Garage, but you can actually click and navigate there. So there's actually a much more sort of interactive and measurable sort of component to the advertising that when you see broadcast availability before, it's much more difficult to measure. And so I think that is going to really transform how we look at advertising in vehicle and certainly radio broadcasting as a whole. Because that medium in terms of advertising has not changed for decades. So
if I'm an advertiser, is there a way that I can buy directly, I can know that somebody's listening in a car, right? can I buy advertising against that? Is that?
Yes, yes, you can. You could buy, again, depending on who you're working with. Obviously, AHA, we are a platform. Fourth band of radio, and so you could actually buy based on geographic location. You could even buy targeting if you know that you're targeting towards a Subaru vehicle driver. We're not going to tell you that it's Dave Sullivan driving that car, but certainly people who fit that profile in that geographic area may be served up an ad that's a good fit, right? A lot of internet sort of and digital advertising has been about really making advertising much more targeted so that you're not getting extraneous advertising that's not a good fit for you, but it's about offering ads that you're really going to act upon. And so in broadcasting, you're really in a very hit and miss sort of scenario because you're buying demographic in a much wider reach. So arguably, ad units are much more valuable now because you're able to bring in, folks like TuneIn and AHA to be able to target the right demographic of people, folks geographically as well as demographically. So,
what are the on AHA? What do you have a sense of which apps in the ecosystem, or which are kind of the ones that people are using the most, or the most popular?
I plead the fifth.
Nice. All of them, right?
It really, believe it or not, it's too early for us to tell. We're really in ground zero. This is the year that we're launching with 10 plus automakers. We've got multiple millions of cars that's going to be launching this year, but this is year one. Because really, if you think about sort of where connected car has been, Ford has dominated that discussion for a very long time with the Ford Sync system. This is the year where folks like Subaru and a lot of folks are actually launching their service, like Honda, Subaru, Porsche. And so for us, it's hard to tell right now because it's not. This is ground zero for everybody. This is like the year that XM radio came out. You would have not probably known that Oprah wouldn't have been big and, on XM radio, right? Because she's got a big brand name. Not until you really get the service out there are you going to really know whether or not people are interested in one thing or the other.
Just to comment on that, and I'm sure this goes through Henry and David's head, heading their groups. You could take a great service with a crappy implementation, and you're not going to get users. So there's no question there are a lot of OEMs that have solutions out there, and we're now just approaching version 2.0 on looking at how to improve the quality, to deliver services in a simple, safe way. We were one of the first services that embraced a small little company near our corporate office in Palo Alto called Tesla. And it's a very unusual implementation, 17-inch screen. Every car ships with an embedded modem, something I'm sure Henry and David wish every one of their cars shipped with. And it's just a fantastic experience, and the adoption's incredible. But the technology is not there. It's not cost effective to provide that type of experience. So it's going to be one of the critical, it's key. How good is this experience going to be in the car, whether it's AHA or TuneIn or Pandora in the car, before you start measuring whether or not people are using it?
Well, that's another interesting question for the auto guys. We were talking about this a little bit. Mirror link. The idea that people ideally, I think, would like to see on the car screen pretty much what they're used to, right? Unless I'm wrong. Wouldn't the best kind of interface, telematics interface for the user, be kind of what they're used to seeing on their smartphone, and which I guess would not be good for the branded experience of the infotainment interface, because it wouldn't, I guess if you adopt that, you're basically adopting what is on the user's smartphone, right?
Definitely. So you take a look at MirrorLink, and MirrorLink is really a neat solution in terms of what it provides from a customer experience. But MirrorLink itself is limited in terms of which phones actually work on MirrorLink. It's a limited ecosystem. But to us, it's really simple. MirrorLink could be a complementary interface to the vehicle, but we will not make it a primary interface because, again, that control and that interface needs to be Kia-like. Mm-hmm. And we know we've done the research. We know what our customers want. We know what works and doesn't work. And so you always have to look at a solution like this as a secondary solution. And even then, there are, Connected Car Consortium and other industry events or forums out there that are trying to come up with ways to bridge that user experience in terms of making sure that it's not distracting and we are providing a good solution to the customer. And so even then, you're projecting the screen on the center stack, there are limitations still that have to factor in terms of usability.
So you end up with a very narrow option and narrow option scenario vis-a-vis what a driver is able to even
exactly. And that's what I'm trying to clear up, is that even the mirror-link solution has a focused solution in terms of what cannot be done in that center stack. It's not just ad hoc, let's say fair, let's show up everything on the phone on the screen.
Why not? You guys are kind of developing your own. You use Microsoft, right, as sort of the...
Well, Microsoft is one of the partners we work with on our infotainment platform.
Okay, right. But you're developing your own ecosystem in a sense, right?
That's correct.
Why not just bring in an aggregator and do it the easy way?
Well, I think there are two approaches. You could actually you could work with someone who can aggregate, like AHA Radio, for example, and others, and or you could do it yourself. And there's a trade-off for both, pros and cons. Some OEMs elected to use the aggregator route because they've probably done the business study and they found it's the best way for them. But we started and we found that we'd like to be our own aggregators. And so, in the case of bringing content to the vehicle, we want to be those aggregators, and we're built this way. This is our strategy, and this is what Kia wants to do. So you're going to find kind of two worlds out there: some that will do it one way, and some is going to do it the other. Not one is wrong and one is right. Everybody's got their own way.
Chia-Lin, are you guys do you essentially compete with if there was such a thing, would MirrorLink be kind of a competition with what you guys do, or not really? That's not really a... This gets to be kind of
I'm a firm believer
baseball.
in that there's no closed doors, and so certainly, there are folks with their own ecosystems, automotive partners, such as Ford and Chrysler, of which we're one of many applications, in that same space. So it's not sort of a one or the other. We have actually are happily ensconced in sort of both sides of the business, and so, do I consider MirrorLink a competition? I think it's a different approach. I mean, to Henry's point, it's going to basically narrow certainly the scope. I'm going to wear my legal hat here and say, the automakers like Dave and Henry, they have to basically control what the user interface looks like, because at the end of the day, they're liable, for what happens in a vehicle. Right, and so even if somebody else is, mirror linking an app, and an app is really flashy and it causes distraction, no one's going to say, Angry Birds, we're going to sue the heck out of you guys for distracting me in a vehicle.
Yeah.
They're going to turn around and basically talk to the automakers, and so I think there is such a concern. For folks like, I defer to folks like Dave and Henry on that, right? So,
I think this is why I go back to partnership. I understand, Henry and Kia are pursuing their their particular angle at this. Where our angle is, and I think you make a good point, we do hear from consumers quite often that they would like to just replicate their smartphone experience inside their car. They don't want it to change. They've learned one way. They don't want it to be any different. On the other side, Chia-Lin makes a very good point that at the end of the day, you're sitting in my car, right? So with the Subaru badge on it and a Subaru name on the back. So what we've tried to focus on, again, is more of a partnership model. And if we find partners that are offering things up in a safe and reliable way, then we consider those to, those are the folks that we want to work with. So, that's how we're taking a little bit of maybe a different approach to it, as opposed to just developing our own ecosystem. And this is like the Subaru way. We'll take more of a partnership approach to that. And, like I said, we've partnered with AHA. We've been working with these guys for a couple of years. Very comfortable with the way that they've presented the interface and the the user experience inside the car. And so we felt that that was an appropriate way to, let's say, dip our toe in the pond and see where that goes.
If I may, I think the biggest challenge is, as a technology marketer, I'm sure a lot of you guys will relate to the fact that, it's all about getting consumers across a digital chasm to basically get them adapted to using technology and do it easily and without crashing and burning in the abyss, right? Mm-hmm. And so then the question is, when you're in a car, how much time do you actually have to basically learn a new user interface, and how do you do so safely when you're driving 60 miles an hour? We love working with folks like Dave. We love working with folks like Ford. We love the fourth band approach because everybody knows how to use an FM station. They know how to change stations using the steering wheel column, the knobs, the touch screen, because even my grandmother knows how to use that in a car. And so at least you don't have to, work hard to help them cross a chasm, and you can still have a digital listening experience that's very similar to FM.
That's a really good point. Like, I'll give you another data point, so to speak. I drove up here from Delaware today, so about 30% of the cars that I passed, somebody was either had a phone up to their ear or they were texting. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a lot of people, and I can guarantee you almost every one of those cars had a technology in it that would allow them to do that hands-free. Maybe except for texting, but at least talking on the phone. I mean, these are a lot of high-dollar cars. So, that kind of illustrates Chia-Lin's point that some of this technology, and I think Karl made a very good point earlier, it's still early days. I mean, honestly, we think these technologies have matured a lot, but to be perfectly honest with you, they're not easy enough for people to use yet. And so, again, that's kind of where we're focused, is trying to make things as easy as possible so consumers can cross that chasm, and you can get the phone out of the hands and let them drive. I mean, that's really our focus.
Okay. Which kind of gets back radio again, and which is, there's a lot of things that could happen that haven't happened yet, but one thing that's a huge opportunity, and I guess it's is what you guys are doing, and then and how it can meld with terrestrial radio. But we were talking before, and we were talking about kind of regionality of advertising. So what you guys are able to do is kind of offer one advertiser in a region, right? They don't have to buy just one channel. They can buy any channel that you guys have in say, the New York area. Is that kind of one thing that you guys?
Yeah, well, we would we'd focus on the number of users in a region, and we could offer a campaign against a region of multiple stations. Like we discussed before, something as simple as an insurance company wants to target people they know are in a car in the Northeast. That's the type of campaign we're capable of doing today because we have enough users in the Northeast that are using some form of either what we call something embedded into these telematics systems or their mobile phone to say, these are people in their car, you can run an audio advertising to them based on this region.
In the car. And they know that they're in the car. The advertiser can know that these people are in the car based on what you can do now.
Yeah.
Through the smartphone at this point.
Well, there's both. Not everything is done by a smartphone. Our implementation in Mercedes is not done by a smartphone. It's done completely through the cloud. So you don't need a smartphone to actually deliver the service. So there's different ways of getting the content into the car. And that's part of the problem. It will be one of the areas that's a challenge for advertisers are when you want to do a campaign, does Henry's system have the same type of implementation that David's system has so that if you wanted to buy advertising across it, that it would work? And so
right. That's a major problem if everyone's got a different. What would be the solution to that? I mean, everyone would have to kind of agree on a standard, right?
Well, there's a lot. I mean, this is from a service perspective, and I'm sure Chia-Lin and I, the whole world would be easier if there was a standard, but there isn't a standard. And Henry explained why there isn't a standard. Yeah. He wants to have a solution that represents a Kia driver, and that's going to be unique to that car. BMW has a whole different idea of what a telematic solution, and they build them to focus on the consumer, not for services that want to deliver ads.
Okay.
If I can comment on advertising, because I think that's is kind of an important point to make, is that, and I think it was mentioned earlier that we drive, what 156 minutes a day, so about 2.5 hours. But how much time do we spend looking at a screen a day? I don't know what the number is. It's got to be more than that, right? And so, to me, I think we're focusing a little bit more on the vehicle while driving, and I think we need to kind of, open our minds a little bit and think outside of that. Meaning, if we get these people's attention and they opted in to be reached out, that is, for hours outside the vehicle, right? Mm-hmm. I think using that big data that comes out of that car with an opt-in, you could really open up an amazing amount of opportunity for advertisement. So take, for example, that I drive, a route every day, and that route can be big data. We know someone drove that route, mm-hmm. and they drive it every day. We know they drive it every day. This can be done today. You can glean from that. Okay, I'm going to start offering that person some coupons for that route. Now that can be done outside the vehicle. It doesn't have to be in the vehicle. So there's a Starbucks along the way. So I'm going to shoot you a coupon to your account on the web. Yeah. And that coupon can be used to cash in for $1 off a latte or whatever. So this just gives you a little bit of food for thought on what things can be done. And this is just the beginning. I mean, I could go on and on and on of scenarios that can be done from an advertisement perspective that not necessarily need to be actively in the vehicle. When the vehicle's moving or the vehicle's driving, there's so much opportunity. Yeah.
It can be all sort of cloud-based, and it doesn't matter when or...
It doesn't, because you're driving 2.5 hours, right? But I'm sure all of us spend hours in front of that screen. And so I think that's where the opportunity is.
And I really am so happy that you brought that up, Henry, because I think that we are living in a world today where, the barriers between what's happening online, on mobile, and finally the car is really blurring. And I think the expectation of a new digital consumer and consumers of digital content is that there should be no barriers in terms of the hardware that you're actually accessing. I mean, the car is yet just another one of the internet-connected things that we're all really looking at. And so, I have a 5-year-old, and her expectation is that she should be able to listen to this great thing called Storynory in the, while she's taking a bath at home, and be able to basically listen to that and keep listening where she last left off from at home in the car, and she should be able to pick up where she last left off. That is the expectation of the digital, content consumer now. And so, you should be able to address that audience no matter where you go, both from an advertising as well as a content perspective, and they expect everything to be sort of bookmarked in the cloud and follow them wherever they go. And that's where we need to probably get to long term.
That brings up, I hate to just keep going back to kind of futurist stuff, but what? Okay, yeah, we're going to take questions, but I want to, okay, sorry. How much time do I have left?
We need to go to questions in a second.
All right. Yeah, ultimately, it seems like what you'd want to have is some integration between apps, right? So like if you're listening to a radio stream, you would also, and there's all, listening to radio, you pass, I don't know, you get some offer, right? There's some sort of a integration, an audio thing that would be either part of that radio stream or interrupting it, mentioning in real time that you will get an offer perhaps. Is this something that's completely not, is this feasible at all? Is it something that, actually Bernard, is this something that, you would imagine that marketers would want to do something like this so it's all not
absolutely.
piecemeal?
I mean, I think there's tons of dimension to the creativity that will happen in the car itself, in the connected car. I mean, it's one of the few remaining frontiers for a developer and a developer experience. So and that's one of the points. When I hear the approach we're taking, kind of with proprietary systems, one of the things that I'm most worried about is that we're repeating ourselves a little bit. If you remember, Samsung and Qualcomm and Nokia, kind of all took the same approach with their devices. At some point, we kind of evolved all of those systems now to a point where we have an open platform on which they all run, and that's when the true creativity happened. Apple, with the iOS ecosystem is as successful as it is because, with tight guidelines, tight restrictions on how to participate, of course, you're opening up that creativity to the creatives. You're opening up that creativity to the developers, right? And the manufacturers are doing what they do best and allowing things like that, experiences that we haven't thought of and couldn't possibly even consider here, happen. And so if we just kind of shepherd the fact that, you know, it's some of actual history on how these platforms evolved and where the best creativity comes from, I think we'll be positioned well, right? And just to comment earlier, I think one of the reasons too we see that usage in the vehicle of this technology is so, people aren't getting it is because it's done in different ways, right? The way I participate and use the Bluetooth connection in my Tahoe is entirely different than the way I use it in my X. So I don't know how to use it in one, frankly, but I do in the other. So if it was a standard, right, if it was built on the same system that I used, swiped, right, tapped the same way in every car I got in, I think you would see that usage go up.
Exactly.
Agreed.
Do you want to go to questions?
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, I think the insight is if, you know, the customers have become, I think, fairly comfortable with trading data for things or for services, right?
Yeah.
Like
Right,
we were talking about Google earlier when we were at lunch. So I think really the opportunity is if a marketer or an advertiser can provide some new service or some new activity that a customer can do in the vehicle that they wouldn't normally either be able to afford or they just don't want to pay for. So, you know, satellite radio in the car brought to you by somebody, right? Something along those lines. I think that's really a good opportunity. And again, I think that's why we're kind of focused on a partner model. So we pick the partners that make the most sense to us, and maybe we can provide some additional services to consumers in the car via some support or some partnership with marketers.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I would love to clear my inbox in the car, literally. 144 minutes, right? Clearing my inbox would be excellent.
We'll get right on that.
All right, we have any questions? I think that. Joe has one.
Well, thank you. It's like really fascinating to hear you guys talk about all the development going on in this new media environment, the car. But David, I was struck by your anecdotal research. A third of all the drivers coming up here texting.
It was scary.
That's illegal, right? So I want to ask you a two-part question, which is one is, are you concerned about the multi-stimuli and the effect that has? You know, that texting and driving or talking and driving has the effect of smoking a joint, right? It's your brain can't process that much stimuli. And then the second part of the question is, what are you guys planning for self-driven vehicles, and how do you think that will change the amount of stimuli you can give people with multiple apps down the road? No pun intended.
To answer the first question, I think, yes, we are very concerned about multiple stimuli in the car. I mean, at the end of the day, driving is a fairly attention, attention is required to drive safely. So at Subaru, we're very, very focused on keeping things simple and safe. So we'll be very careful about, again, the partners that we pick inside the car that ride alongside of us. In terms of self-driving cars, actually, part of the way that I drove up here, I was using EyeSight, which is our new adaptive cruise control, and we have braking automatic safety braking system. And so, I was able to maintain a distance from the car in front of me. You can imagine that. Okay, make that a little bit more. Or adapt that a little bit more, and then of course the car's driving for you. I can't share with you future product plans. We just don't do that. But it's something that we already have technology on the road today that can do some of that. Now you can't take your hands off the wheel, and you can't not pay attention. But if you get temporarily distracted by something, EyeSight can is there a little bit of a safety net there to kind of keep eyes on the road for you. So. I do think that we tend to get ahead of ourselves a little bit in the adaptive or in the self-driving car conversation. I know it's very kind of sexy to talk about right now, but I do think, again, we were talking about the 2025 and how quickly is this stuff going to be adopted. I mean, at the end of the day, we have to be responsible and we have to take our time to make sure that stuff is safe before it gets on the road. So I think, I think it's still a little early to be talking about. That is very interesting to see what some technology companies are working on, like Google, for example, and I know they're heavily promoting that effort. But at the end of the day, I think there's still a lot to be worked out on the regulatory side and on the use case side. When is that appropriate? When is it not? So I think there's still a little bit more work to do there.
Karl, panel, thank you very much. I think we're going to be seeing this reprised at a number of OMA mobiles in the next 4 or 5 years. Thanks very much, guys.